Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site. And with me is my co-host from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, Seth Cox. And after about a week off, because the Cardinals had their bye, we didn't have any game to review. We did our report card, our midseason report card last week. We're at episode 714 as we get to preview Cardinals versus Cowboys on Monday Night Football in week 9 for what might be the only show this week, as I've not been able to nail down a time with Katie Drummond from Cowboys Wire. I reached out to Marcus Mosher, who runs the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Haven't heard from him yet, so it might be just a single show for this week. And coming off the bye week, we have some good news, Seth. We have some good news injury-wise. Kyler's practicing. And while the team is, playing some games with the injury situation, Adam Schefter has reported multiple times that Kyler is preparing to be the starter, that the Cardinals are preparing him to start. Jonathan Gannon said on Thursday, when asked, "Are you preparing Kyler to start?" He said yes. And while they were coy and they pushed the quarterback availability for the media till tomorrow, I think, till Friday, and wouldn't announce who it was. Originally, Kyler was scheduled to talk to the media, so they're just playing a little bit of games, unless during practice he aggravated something. And so if that's the possibility, then that might be true, and we'll leave the door open for that. But in other news, Garrett Williams appears to be coming back. They cut Darren Hall, they cut Michael Carter, though Michael Carter will probably be elevated this week because they only have 2 running backs on the roster. But Garrett Williams was designated to return from IR. That'll be a big help, as the Cardinals probably will have their full cornerback starters with Max and Will Johnson and Garrett Williams to go against Dallas's receivers. B.J. Ojulari returned to practice for the first time in a year and a half. And so, Walter Nolan is... I don't think Walter Nolan will get activated this week. He'll probably be reinstated next week, but who knows? So we are seeing a trend towards health, Seth.
Yeah, and that's the hope, right? Even Walter Nolan sounded a little bit like he was ready to go. Doesn't mean he is, right? But he thinks he might be ready to go. And so that's a nice, if you look at it from this perspective, it's a nice mid-season set of additions, right? You get, and I know people love Will Johnson. He's been playing really well, so I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but you get your best corner back. And now you get potentially 2 pass rushers, and one of the things we've discussed ad nauseum is how bad the pass rush has been, especially late in games, and it's blatantly unfair, something you and I have talked about for years, to expect anything much of a first year interior defensive lineman. It's not something that you see from
especially missing all of training camps. Like Walter Nolan's rookie year was basically washed up with that calf injury, but maybe he is a young athletic body who might add a little something, even if it's not statistical.
But even if it's, I was thinking about this, Jess, like, what if he's the guy that comes out and gives you pressures in the fourth quarter that makes quarterbacks a little more uncomfortable in the fourth quarter? Something we just haven't seen at all. right? We've talked about
That's
it
true.
just way too much, but like maybe he gives you a little something more.
Right, because you've talked about how their pass rush win rate is pretty all right, but their pressure rate and their sack rate is bad.
Yeah.
So
And so, you look at it from that perspective, maybe he gives you just a little bit more juice, right? And you can look at it from that perspective, but like it's interesting to see, these guys getting healthy at what we would say is the right time, right? And so,
yes.
and then on top of that, like you mentioned, BJ Ojolari, that's another big one. We'll see how that goes. Um, if you get anything at all, it's a plus at this point. Would you not agree?
Oh, absolutely, because like we talked about the offseason that Ojolari became like a persona non grata. Like they completely like all their off-season moves were as if he didn't exist, as opposed to a year ago when they were entering 2024, they were banking on him being their best pass rusher. And they went out this last offseason. They got Josh Sweat. They drafted Jordan Birch. They re-signed Baron Browning. They traded for Baron Browning. And so basically they moved on without Ojolari. And if he gives you something, that'll be nice, especially as if he flashes it all, because he does have that ability.
Yeah, and that would be great for him. And so, getting anything from him would be just completely ideal. But obviously completely unexpected. Like nobody at all thinks it's going to happen. And that's not a shot, right? Like we're not saying that to be negative. We're just saying that to be realistic. Like
Right.
a guy that, you know, hasn't played since January of 2024. Now he is expected to help. Like, come on, guys, it's not fair. So yeah, in the scheme of additions, they're two underwhelming additions from the sake of what to expect from them this year. But who knows? Maybe they can, like we said, give a little juice to an off or a defense that is undoubtedly, unquestionably the worst in the NFL in the fourth quarter.
For sure.
And so, so maybe this will be the change that moves them forward.
Well, and for me, I love the idea of getting Garrett Williams back for this game, because while Max has been fine and Will Johnson's been pretty good this year, it will move Jalen Thompson out of the slot. While JT can play the slot, you're not. You definitely can't upgrade from him. And Garrett Williams is a clear upgrade to him, which pushes JT back in just to one role, and then you get the three cornerbacks on the field again without having to, play guys like Keitrell Clark and Denzel Burke. It's going to be helpful. And if you think about it, like that Carolina game that they almost fell apart in, they were missing for the next couple of games. They were missing Garrett. They were missing Will Johnson. And so those two games where they didn't give up the lead, barely held on to it. They had a full strength secondary for the first game and a half, and so that'll be good. But let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys, who are. I will say this is a critical game for the Cardinals, because, and I said this on the radio when I was on AM 1060 for the last couple of weeks, that as bad as the Cardinals are in right now, the 2-5, they, big picture, they're going to have to go 8-2 to make the postseason if there's any hope. But at the same time, their 5 losses were by a total of 13 points, which means they're a few plays from being 7-0. We just know that that's what makes them not a good team, is the fact they keep losing those games. But at the same time, this game, if they win this game, there will be there'll be such a sliver of hope if they somehow win their next 3 games and they head into week 12 now 5-5. Then you can build some momentum. Now it's crazy to talk about a team winning 3 games in a row that has lost 5 straight, but that starts with the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are kind of in the same situation as the Cardinals, desperate but for different reasons. Let's talk about this Cowboys team. An odd Cowboys team in the fact that they are one of the very best offenses absolutely in the NFL. They average over 30 points a game. They are second in points. They're second in yards. They have the number 1 passing attack. Dak Prescott is number 4 in receiving yards. George Pickens is 3rd or 4th in passing yards. Dak Prescott, 3rd or 4th in receiving yards. George Pickens. Javonte Williams is in the top 5 in rushing yards. They move the ball extremely well and they score points, but their defense is so bad. They give up an average of 31.3 points a game and an average of 405 yards a game. Let's remember that. So that is the average. That's what they're averaging through 7-8 games. The Cardinals' best offensive performance has been 27 points last against 27 points and 400 yards on the nose. And the Cowboys allow more than that on average. And so the Cowboys are such a dichotomy because their defense is so bad, but they are so dangerous offensively. And that's going to be an interesting thing for the Cardinals because playing against a bad defense, well, that's good for the Cardinals offense that has been very up and down. However, their defense, especially in the 4th quarter, they are going to struggle against this Dallas offense.
Yeah, and the reality becomes that this Dallas offense is, an elite passing offense, and they're a terrible just defense overall. You mentioned it, 31st in points against, right? 31st in yards against. They've allowed the most first downs in the NFL this year. They're 22nd in turnovers, which is not good. They are 29th in rushing yards allowed and 31st in passing yards allowed. Like, this team gives up yards in massive chunks. And you look at the season, right? Their lowest yardage allowed total was 302 in their opening game loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. Since then, 506, 489, 410, 426. Those are just the 400 plus games. They are a miserable defensive team. Just miserable. And yet they're 3-4-1. And you look at their losses, they lost at Philadelphia. They lost at Chicago. They lost at Carolina. And they lost at Denver. They're 1-4 on the road. They are 3-1
3-0-1
or 3-0-1. Thank you. 3-0-1 at home. They are a terrible defensive team at home, but their offense at home is otherworldly. I mean, you look at the numbers, Jess. 478 yards, 430.
They scored 40 and more in all 3 of their home games.
Yeah, 436 yards and 409 yards. Over 400 yards a game. Now, again, to be fair, they gave up 400 or 506 and 489 in two of those games. The only game that they were decent, and that's a very extreme. Decent was against the Washington Commander Skins, and that was the game that Jaden Daniels had to leave early. And so this is a team that their record is accurate. All the stats are accurate. Like, this isn't the Cardinals where you're like you said, like, oh, they're 3 plays away from being 5-2, or 7 plays away from being 7-0. Like, you look at this team and you're like, this team is buns on the road. And they are the best offense in football at home. And it is a prime time game at home for the Dallas Cowboys against the Cardinals defense that before anybody else other than the Rise Up See Red podcast talked about it, was 22nd in yards allowed. Again, not even a top 20 in yardage defense. By the way, they're top 20 in yardage now. But they went from 3rd in points per game allowed to 13th. And
we know the story of the fourth quarter. They've allowed 76 fourth quarter points in 7 games and 77 points in the other 3 quarters of their 7 games.
Yeah, and so you look at this game, this is prime territory for 2 different things. A blowout for the Cowboys, or one of those epic shootout games where it's just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think we're praying to see the latter, because the former would just be disappointing, but it would be on brand for the Cowboys to go ahead, put up 42, hold the Cardinals to 28 and 400 plus yards of offense, 415 yards, 28 points, and win 42-28, right? and everybody's like, well, I guess the offense was a little better, right? So,
right. In fairness, though, they gave up 37 to the Giants. They gave up 40 to the Packers, and it was just the 22 they gave up to Washington in those 3 home games. But they just they pile up yards and first downs. Dak Prescott, his 100 first down completions for first down lead the NFL. Javonte Williams, 34 rushes for first downs, lead the NFL. Javonte Williams has been fantastic. It looks like he finally found the right spot after his rookie year. He looked so good till he got hurt and just hadn't come back to that. Javonte Williams has been great. George Pickens has been fantastic, and now they got CeeDee Lamb back, and so that is the combination. You got Pickens, Lamb, and Jake Ferguson. Talk about a trio of pass catchers. George Pickens with 43 catches, 685 yards, and 6 touchdowns, and then in the 5 games, CeeDee's got 28 for 406. That is going to be. I'm very interested to see how the secondary holds up against these guys, because all 3 of them, Pickens, Lamb, and Ferguson, are producing a lot. Ferguson's got 51 Now, granted, Jake Ferguson right now is on the 2023 is the 2023 Zach Ertz rate, where he's averaging 6 yards a catch, but he's got 51 catches and 6 touchdowns. And then CD's average, like both Pickens and CD, big plays. CD's averaging 14.5 a catch. Pickens 15.9 a catch. They're just doing everything really well offensively. And here's the thing: Dak Prescott 16 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions in the 8 games that they've played. That is, that's pacing for 34 touchdown passes to 10 interceptions. That's a great. He's having a fantastic year. Oh, and watch this. He's only been sacked 10 times in 8 games. So yeah.
Jess,
what the Cardinals Oh my gosh. What are the Cardinals going to do defensively against that?
I know. And think about this, Jess. You look at what the Cowboys are doing and their offense. And it's the fact that, like you said, outside of the game against the Commanders, it's mirrored as poorly on their defense is kind of wild, right? Like it's crazy to think that they're having that much success offensively, but they're that bad defensively. And a lot of it comes down to, obviously the first thing, you get rid of the best player defensively in the NFL, you're gonna have some issues, right?
Right.
So that's, that is what it is. But their offense, how do you, you mentioned it, how do you stop them? Like what do you do? And you look at this season specifically for Dak, right? He's not exactly just like hucking the ball downfield, but he's getting a lot of big plays after the catch. So Brian Schottenheimer's doing a really, really nice job of scheming things up. You look at it this year, his ADOT is not, it's actually the lowest of his career, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? You just rattled off all those insane, 15.9, 14.5. Something named Ryan Florney has 13.3. Kavontae Turpin, 13.4. Jalen Tolbert, 12.3. Those are all what they're averaging yards per reception, but Dak's ADOT's the lowest of his career, 7.6 yards. The only time it was lower was in 2018. I mean, this is a guy that consistently is 8.5 yards per attempt. So he's nearly a yard lower, but it doesn't matter because those schemes and what's working and getting open is creating yards after the catch. And you mentioned it, George Pickens is the perfect foil to CeeDee Lamb. Like, it has created one of, if not the best 1-2 punches in the NFL, wide receiver. And they're so dynamic together. And then you add, you sprinkle in a Kavontae Turpin, who is this, elite track guy. You have a guy like Ryan Florney, who just comes out of nowhere, right, and is producing. And then you have a really, really solid, obviously not a Trey McBride level, but a really solid tight end in Jake Ferguson, who yardage-wise is their number 3 guy. I mean, their top 3 guys combined have over 1,400 yards receiving already, Jess. And so, I mean, the Cardinals' top 3 don't even have 1,000 between the 3 of them. And so it's just one of those situations that you look at.
Cardinals don't even have 1,400 passing yards as a team.
Right.
They're at 1,399.
And so you look at it, right, and it's just this is a dynamic and diverse offense. You mentioned Javonte Williams. I mean, how cool is it for him to be having the success after just what was an unfortunately terrible career after a solid, not spectacular, but solid rookie season. And he he just was a bust after that, right? He had the injury, came back, was never the same guy, and now 2 years or technically 3 years removed from the injury, looks like he's that guy again. He's more dynamic and explosive. Most yards per attempt in his career, over 5 yards per carry. Already the most rushing touchdowns in his career. Jess, I mean, this is a guy that came in with 11 career rushing touchdowns. He's got 8 already.
Yeah.
And so you look at the offense. You mentioned the offensive line. This is the best offense that they've played all season, and they're not healthy yet. So it's not so much that they can't do it. It's just that they haven't shown the tendency to be able to make plays consistently, and as we mentioned, more importantly, get off the field consistently, especially in the fourth quarter. But this is an offense that's going to stress you for an entire game. The Cardinals have not allowed a 400-yard game. The most yards they've allowed in a game this season was 384 to the Seattle Seahawks. But you look at the two games that kind of give you pause, and they're Seattle and Indianapolis, right? And what were those games? What were both teams able to do in those games? They were really just able to control things on the ground and control the line of scrimmage to the point where a middling pass rush was now inept. And so that's what the question becomes for this team this year is, can they stand up to, probably, I mean, would you not agree? Probably the best offense in the NFL this season.
I mean, from top to bottom, yes. Like, I guess Indy is technically, but they're getting elite play from Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones's play. But the fact that the Cowboys get it from 4 different players, I think it's much better. Well, that, and the truth is, you can trust Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott is having one of his finest seasons. Yeah, and say what you want about Dak Prescott, he's playing elite level quarterback playing right now. He's quarterbacking at an elite level right now. It's just, it looks too easy. And then you look defensively, they don't rush the passer well. They only have 2 more sacks than the Cardinals do, but they do it a little bit differently. The Cowboys have 14 sacks as a team, but they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players who have sacks, while the Cardinals have 3 players in Josh Sweat, Calais Campbell, and Baron Browning who have 10 of the 12 sacks as a team. And they get quarterback hits from all over. They're not particularly good at rushing the passer, and they're not particularly good at stopping the run. In terms of fantasy, I believe quarterbacks average nearly 24 fantasy points against them a week. Kind of like whoever the quarterback is, if you've got them on your fantasy team, you play them. They also give up a lot of running back fantasy points. So if you're into fantasy, Bam Knight might not be a bad start this week, considering the role that he has and what the Cowboys do. So they're not particularly good defensively at any one thing. They do get turnovers consistently. They've forced at least 1 turnover in 5 straight games and in 6 of their last 7. And their blowout win that they had over Washington was with 2 takeaways. And at the same time, they have taken care of the ball in their 3 home games. They've only turned the ball over once.
Yeah, and that's again what makes them kind of unique and special this year is that their offense really takes care of the ball. But it's also the interesting part of football, right? Like, I know they're technically one game better than the Arizona Cardinals at 3-4-1, but isn't it interesting that the best offense in the NFL and what has been considered a middling, if not underwhelming, offense in the Cardinals, and the results are I don't want to say nearly the same, but the results are close in terms. I mean, the Cardinals win this game; they're technically ahead of the Cowboys in the playoff standings, right? And so you look at that and you just go, how does that even make sense? Like, how do you have the best offense in the NFL? You have the best kicker.
By having the worst defense.
Right.
Worst defense.
And so that's the thing is, like, complementary football is something you and I have talked about so much this year. They lack that complementary football. They lack any semblance of it. Their offense, carries them, and their defense just lets them down all game as opposed to just in one quarter.
That's crazy. That really is crazy. Let's look more specifically at the matchup for this game. So coming up next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's look at the matchups, the keys that the Cardinals need to make to have to win this game. That's coming up next on Rise of Seaward. We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web, episode 714, talking about our Cardinals Cowboys Week 9 preview. I think I guess Matt keys wise, I don't know how much we can lean on the defense in terms of keys. I think if there's one thing defensively, say they need to create one turnover and get one other stop. They need to stop the Cowboys at least twice. And then offensively, they just have to do what other teams have done against the Cowboys. They can't afford against this Dallas team to have really any offensive hiccups.
No, and you look at it, there's a couple things to that, right? The first thing being, as you said, they have to come out and match up offensively. They have to come out and be able to run the ball against, one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. And the reason I stress the run to begin with is because they have to be able to control the clock. I mean, you want to take away time of possession from the Cowboys because the more they have the ball, the more success they're going to continue to have. Again, 29th in yards allowed rushing, 25th though in yards per attempt, Jess. So they're averaging almost 5 yards per carry given up. They've allowed 77 first downs rushing. So they've got to figure out a way, the Cardinals, that is, to have a not just competent but good rushing attack this week.
That's going to be hard. I mean, because if you get Kyler back in the lineup, they can't go back to playing calling plays the way they did when they had James Conner and Trey Benson in the lineup. Drew Pensing would be stupid to do that. I think they have to put. I think they need to. They can't lean on they have to be able to run the ball, but they can't make that the focus.
So,
right? If that makes sense.
Right, but they also from there, right, the next thing is they have to be able to come out and attack these poor Dallas cornerbacks. Deron Bland is having a fine year. He's clearly their best guy, but after that, it's bad to abysmal. Reddy Stewart, good.
Across the board because the Dallas eye discipline is bad. Like you can throw the ball to the running backs and like Trey McBride and Elijah Higgins should be open all game. Yeah, just everywhere. The passing game. Get guys there because Dallas is just bad across the board. They're bad tackling. They They don't cover well, and they have bad eye discipline too.
Yeah, and so you look at it, I mean, and then like you said, they don't actually rush the passer very well. Their best pass rusher this year is Dante Fowler Jr., a guy we're familiar with, from his time with the Rams. Donovan Arezaruke is having a fine rookie season, but it's not like he's a world beater. Jadeveon Clowney's there now, and he's Jadeveon Clowney, right? Like, and so, like you said, they get a lot from a lot of different guys, but they just don't have anybody that's, Kenny Clark's been mostly a bust. Of course, I say that, and he'll probably have 4 sacks in a game, right? But, and so you look at it, and you have a lot of opportunities, as you said, because their corners. I talk about this all the time. Their corners are 4th and 5th in tackling on the team. It's not ideal. It's not an ideal scenario to have your corners that high. It's something, I talk about all the time with like the safeties, right? Like the Cardinals safeties, unless it's Budda Baker and he's playing a lot in the box, Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, and then especially Rabbit having so many tackles, not ideal, because it just means you're not making plays at the line of scrimmage like you need to be. The Cowboys are basically worse than that, right? And so those are situations that you look at and you go, okay, that's stuff that you should be able to take advantage of. Those are things that you should be able to really, make plays on. And then you look at other stats. You mentioned, the guys that they have 4 interceptions on the season, 4. But Jess, that's not the appalling thing. Donovan Wilson, who is a journeyman safety, and I don't mean that in a negative way by any means, but is a journeyman safety. He leads the team in passes defensed with 3. By the way, Jess, their top corner is somebody I literally have never heard of. Triquizzy Bridges. I'm not making that up. That's his name. By the way, Jess, he's played 23% of the snaps. He has 2 passes defensed. Their defensive ends, 32-year-old Jadeveon Clowney and 31-year-old Dante Fowler, are next with 2 passes defensed each. Like, their corners don't make plays on the ball.
Well, right. They've got 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the team's 17 pass breakups are from guys who play on the line of scrimmage.
Right. And so you look at that, that's just, they're just not a really good team. And so, like you said, they can't stop the run. The Cardinals' rushing attack without Trey Benson and James Conner hasn't been overly effective. Now, to be fair, they did gain 146 yards against 168, sorry, against the Tennessee Titans. Should have been 169, by the way, but
yes, it should have been.
But to your point, that's neither here nor there. They have to be able to throw the ball consistently and effectively. That means being able to attack all levels of the field and make plays on the ball. And they have to get a big game from their passing attack that allows them to really, open things up. But the bigger thing is it allows them to control the clock. And I know you don't usually look at that from the passing game, but if you're able to just continue to get enough to get first downs, and I know fans don't want to hear this, right? Like if it's screens, whatever it is to like move the chains and hold on to the football, that's not a bad thing this week, because the biggest matchup, Jess, and you hinted at it, is can this defense slow down, not stop, because they will not stop, but can they slow down this Dallas Cowboys offense? And I mean, the natural inclination and the reality is to say no, right? So they need, more than ever, they need the complementary football we've talked about, and the offense, as they have done all season. The offense has to control the time of possession, because if you mitigate the possessions from the Cowboys, even if they're scoring a lot, or they're scoring on 50% of their possessions, which they do, you maybe at home for the first time you hold them under 40, maybe even 35, right? And you give yourself a chance against this abysmal defense to win the game.
Yeah. Matchups in particular, well, we've talked about the cornerbacks against the receivers, however they line up. But here's a lower key one I think is going to be really important, because the Dallas offensive line right now is good, but they do have one position where you can look at it as being slightly deficient, and that's because Cooper Beebe is out, and so they got Brock Hoffman starting at center. Tyler Booker, remember the guy that we weren't exactly thrilled about the Cardinals potentially drafting. Tyler Booker's been good. They're at right guard. Tyler Smith, the left guard. Tyler Guyton, Terrence Steele. Those guys, that offensive line is good. So, but they're at center. Brock Hoffman. We need someone on the interior, whether it's Calais or Darius Robinson, Dalvin Tomlinson, to dominate or to win more often than not against the weakest part of that Dallas offensive line.
Yeah, and while Booker has been good, he's been really good in the run game. He has struggled in pass protection. And so that's kind of where you have to look at it, as that interior offensive line is susceptible to giving up pressures, not necessarily sacks, as you said. Dak has been excellent at mitigating that, but you're able to create pressures on them. But again, this defense hasn't consistently gotten pressures. And even worse, they're terrible at converting pressures to sacks. So how do you make plays and get big plays out of this team and win in that direction? That would be, ideal to see this week. The other thing is, if you have Garrett Williams, is he going to follow CeeDee Lamb around when he's in the slot? And then do you just have Will Johnson go against George Pickens, or do you let Max and Will share duties? Those are all legitimate questions for the defense, and not any that I can answer, because I genuinely am like, I have no idea, man. Like,
yeah,
it's tough. But the other thing is, and we mentioned it, they have to be able to stop Javonte Williams. Have to. Like, if you can't slow down Dak, and nobody has all season, so I don't want it to be like, oh, they're the only ones. No. If you can't slow down Dak, you have to at least, take the rushing attack for the Cowboys out of it.
Yeah. Coming up next on the Res of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's move on. Let's talk about the props, the picks, and predictions that we've got. Let's come to next on Res of Sierra. We're back on the Res of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. And the final segment of the show is where we like to make our predictions and give you some betting advice. Although the betting advice will be a little bit lean, because there aren't a lot of props, at least for the Cardinals, they're not. But in terms of picks and predictions, now, if we want to know what the public is thinking, the public is backing the Cowboys in droves. According to the numbers from BetMGM, 88% of the public are backing the Cowboys to win straight up. 89% of the spread bets, the Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites. 89% of the handle are backing the Cowboys to cover. And this is, somewhat more understandable. 63% have the over. Now, granted, the projected total, it's high at 53.5, but 63% say we're going to hit the over, which at least that is understandable. What's interesting is that in terms of the odds, the spread that's set, interesting that a team like the Cowboys against a team like the Cardinals isn't even getting 3 full points, which means there is some trepidation about this Dallas team, especially defensively. So while the public is heavily backing the Cowboys, the fact that the line is only 2.5 points suggests that these two teams are far more evenly matched than the public would believed it to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part, is that you look at it and there's not a lot of there's just not a lot of data to show that the under is going to hit, which, when you look at it from that perspective, right, you're always like, oh, the over is going to cash so easily. I mean, the Cowboys are averaging 40 points a game at home. So the Cardinals just need to pitch in 2 touchdowns, and they give up 30 points a game. That's 70. So 53.5. And so that's where you end up going, how did this not even get to 45 points total? Right? Like, you're like, what happened? But man, 2.5 is an interesting line. Is that just Vegas going, I don't know what to make of this Cardinals team, and their losses are 13 total points.
Yeah, I think that impacts it. And so, what do I expect for this game coming off the bye? I'd like to think I'd like to predict the Cardinals win. I can't predict the Cardinals win. There's nothing about this team that says they're gonna win. But do I expect this game to be wild? I believe so. And so I think this game, and if we're going to keep going with the trends, I'm going to say this: Cowboys win this game 37-34 on either a game-winning touchdown or field goal in the final minute of the game. They have the ball last and win the game, and it's more of the same, just in a different way.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys win this one. I'm going to go with kind of what I said. I think it's going to be like, 38-28 type of game, where the Cardinals offense, finally clicks, so to speak, with Kyler, but their defense is just, that offense at home is just humming. And so that's the kind of result you get. I look at this game and again, there's not, like Jess said, there's not a lot of props to bet right now, but there are a couple that are interesting. There's touchdown scores. Javonte Williams, anytime touchdown is not worth, anything. CeeDee Lamb, touchdown score is not worth anything. But when you put them together and you throw in George Pickens, you get plus 900. I know you're thinking 3 different guys, but yeah, I mean, those guys all are going to have a lot of chances. I do like Javonte Williams as the first touchdown scorer of the game, though, at plus 550. That's really an interesting one to me, because that's a pretty big number for a guy that scores all the time.
Right. And I'd say I don't have it for BetMGM, so they don't have the scoring props, but 2+ touchdowns, give me Javonte Williams on that. Do they have that one for FanDuel?
Yeah, plus 440. So not great odds, but not bad odds. That's a good one. Jess, are you taking the over or under for Dak in this one? 264.5.
Yeah, I like the over for this one. I just they haven't stopped anyone Yeah, and it's interesting because they've got different lines here for wow, BetMGM has some weird lines because they're all the same lines. They've got that price can't be right. Let me refresh that because they had 264 and a half, 270 and a half, and 271 and a half, but all the same odds. It just updated. So 268 and a half. So yeah, go with FanDuel with the 264 and a half. 268 and a half, I think is. And here's the crazy thing on the alternate passing yards at 250, both Kyler and Dak Prescott are it's minus 165 for Dak and minus 135 for Kyler. So the odds makers see this being a quarterback shootout in terms of that. And then touchdowns over 1.5 touchdown passes for Kyler is minus 155 and minus 225 for Dak. And interceptions thrown the odds suggest no one expects interceptions from either quarterback, and it's over half an interception is plus 105 for both players. So yeah, I actually kind of like Cardinals have been pretty good about getting their hands on one a game. I want to say give me one Dak interception at the over half an interception at plus 105. But yeah, I say take the over on Dak's passing yards. And then the one that I love is that they're giving us great Chad Ryland props, both for field goals. Over 1.5 field goals is plus 105, and over 2.5 extra points at plus 105. Based on my prediction of 37-34, that gives you both 2 field goals and 4 extra points. And so my prediction says the Cardinals that he will hit both of those plus odd props. Seth is with the 28 points for the Cardinals. You're looking more at going for the over extra points as opposed to the field goals.
Yeah, and I could see definitely a scenario where it's 27 or even like 30, right? And you get the 3. So it's one of those games where I think, especially Ryland and Aubrey, if you can get both of them at plus money, it's really interesting. And the other thing is with the Cowboys pass defense, the interception thing, to your point, it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen because interceptions happen all the time, but I mean, they don't create turnovers. So it's interesting to see. The last one I want to talk about was the longest pass. Take the over for Dak 37.5. I think they complete at least one big one over 40.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. The rushing props, the Cardinals just squeaked in, and so if you like Zonovan or Bam, you can get him an over 55.5 yards. I think I like that though. Though what I love is laddering Javonte at over 64.5 and then taking the alternate rushing yards of 75 plus at plus 140. I think those two numbers are easy. And I don't know about the plus of the 100 plus, but if you want to ladder it up there just for fun, it is plus 380. But I think a lock Javonte with at least 65 and at least 75 yards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he's going to hit 75 plus in this one. I just don't see the Cardinals stopping this offense enough to justify. So I would genuinely take, and I know it's easy to say it, but like I would genuinely just take all the overs on all the Cowboys offensive props. Like that's genuinely how I would feel looking at this.
And we now have some receiving props coming in for the Cardinals as well. All right, this one I love. I love this one. Marvin Harrison over 4.5 receptions at plus 125. I love that. And then give me Elijah Higgins over 1.5 receptions for plus 140, especially with the linebacker play. I mean, Trey McBride, his reception total is really high, so to get the over on his receptions, it's over 7.5 for plus 115. That 6, 7, 8 is a real sweet spot, but I think it's hard to get 8. But I think Elijah Higgins will easily get 2 catches. That's kind of what he does with Kyler, but you get nice plus 140 odds there. And then if you want to, I like the receptions numbers. If you want to go crazy on receiving yards, there's no really good value. Like last week, well, I guess it was on the Monday night game, there was an easy prop for plus money. It was Kareem Hunt over 0.5 yard receiving at plus money. Oh my gosh, that one. And then he got it on a 2-yard touchdown pass. And so that was there are no plus odds on receiving yards, but you get several plus odds on receiving or receptions. And so give me Marv over 4.5 at plus 125, and give me Elijah Higgins over 1.5 at plus 140.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. And I like the Higgins call. I would even, like you said, 2s he's usually good for. In this game, in this scenario where I think the Cardinals are going to have to throw the ball to stay in it, I think laddering him up to 4, if you have that option, would not be a bad thing.
Anything else in terms of that? We like those rushing props and passing props. Anything else of value that you like? I know FanDuel's got better variety of bets you can make than BetMGM. So you've got any of those fun things that you want to add to that?
No, they really don't have much since it's a Monday night game yet. So, they've got the passing and TD score props, but that's about it thus far.
All right. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk of the web. If this probably will be our only show of the week, so our next one will be next week when we get to talk about the results of the game. But until then, unless I can get someone to talk Cowboys in the next couple of days, that'll wrap it up for this week. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. We'll be back again next week. Thanks again for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise Up Red Sea, Be Red C-Red, and of course, Rise Up C-Red.
Rise!